Hey ladies and gents, I hope you're all doing very well. Welcome to my complete defending tutorial for eFootball 2022. We're going to be looking at the new defending controls and mechanics, how that differs from PES 2021, and also the benefits these new controls bring. The first thing I want to point out is how the new matchup system works and how it differs from the jockey button in PES 2021. If you're holding X, which was formerly R2, this will now intercept passes being played through you. In PES 2021 there was always that slight chance a player would let the ball through them, but now your player will intercept, especially if it's played directly at you. The second thing is, by holding X, this expands your player's intercept radius. Players will lunge, slide, literally do anything in their power to prevent that pass going through if it's close enough for them to intercept. Another thing is that by holding X, it doesn't hinder your player's movement as much as it did in PES 2021, and this is really useful for fine-tuning your player's position as they face the ball as well. If you can get close enough to another player whilst holding X, they will produce a weak standing tackle, which can help win the ball but won't necessarily cause your opponent player to stumble in the way a normal standing tackle would, but by using this method there's far less chance of giving away a free kick or a penalty. So now let's take a look at some matchup examples. In this first example, you're going to see me applying a high press. Notice how I'm switching between players to cover the passing lanes to prevent them from playing out from defence. Once a gap does appear, I select a pie to get across quickly, and by holding X, this helps increases intercept range, as I touched on previously. We'll see a better example of this intercept range later on, but I was able to turn over the ball in an advanced part of the pitch through good player selection, cutting out the passing lanes and forcing an error from my opponent. Let's take a look at this intercept range and how far will a player go to attempt to win the ball whilst holding X on your PS4 or PS5 controller, or A if you're using an Xbox controller. Just look at how far Varane automatically slides tackles to try and intercept the ball without any press of the slide tackle button for myself. Holding X is also a great way to block shots on goal. Arsenal have a quick counter-attack but quickly run out of support as I do well to hold them up. However, after patiently probing, looking for a weakness in my defence, they work it nicely and eventually play it wide to Tavares. He is able to play the ball into the box, and it's at this point I grab Varane, bring him across whilst holding X, and he leaps to make a vital block. One of the most important things when defending is getting your dash just right, and it's important that it's assigned to R2 or right trigger, because now depending on how much you depress the R2 or right trigger determines if you'll do a full speed sprint, a gentle run, a jog or a quick walk, and each of these determines your stopping time. Just look here how Wan-Bissaka fails to stop in time because I had R2 completely held down. Whilst matchup will help your player intercept the ball, it doesn't mean that the ball is glued to your foot. It may bounce off and your opponent may benefit from your bad luck. Now I'm going to show you why matchup is the best and safest way to win the ball. It results in winning the ball and rarely ever gives your opponent a foul unless it's mistimed or you're using it in combination with the new physical button, which we'll cover off soon. It can also cause your opponent to stumble, and it's dead easy to use. All you have to do is just hold X and your player will automatically tackle your opponent when it is safe to do so. Here are two more examples of me winning the ball back safely by holding X. The first in the penalty box where we want to avoid making a mistimed tackle, and then in central midfield as the opponent turns his back to me. Now let's touch on the new physical button, and I'm going to explain how to get the most out of this as well. So the most ideal situation to use this is when you're side by side with your opponent to try and muscle them off the ball, as you'll see here as PK wrestles with Morata, forcing him wide. Then once I do get close enough and Morata turns and gives me a sight of the ball, I use the matchup button to make the tackle. The new physical button is assigned to L2 or the left trigger, and it's best left assigned there because just like the dash button, you're going to apply different forces of physical power depending how far you press it. you can use it to barge players off the ball, as Umtiti here takes the ball ever so easily by outmuscling his opponent. Just how physical you can be is determined by player stats and body weight of the player that you're selecting. Just watch here how PK sends Cuadrado to the dirt, but Jordi Alba has much more difficulty shrugging him off the ball. So here we can see Luke Shaw chasing back to stop Arsenal breaking. Notice how I use super cancel for my approach. This ensures I have total control over his pathing, ensuring he doesn't run in behind the Arsenal player, and when holding super cancel it maintains your player's momentum, and in certain areas of the pitch without the ball improves your player's speed as it did in PES 2021. I just want to quickly go back to the matchup feature here, because I wasn't using it here with Fred, and watch how the ball goes right through him. The key to good defending is good player selection, and if the secondary player indicator isn't over the player you want to select, then you'll have to use the right analog stick for player selection. You now push and hold the right analog stick from the player carrying the ball and not your currently selected player as it had been in the past. You'll see that I need to select Varane as he's dropping too deep, and Shaw has the secondary player indicator, which is no use right now. When you are using the new physical button, try to avoid doing this, chasing back with a huge gap between your player and your opponent and holding sprint down fully along with the L2, because if they cut inside, it'll cause your player to slide across the ground or in the worst case scenario, fall over. Whenever a cross comes into your box, I'd always recommend pressing shoot to clear, ideally with the left analog stick pointed diagonally away from goal. You'll see here, once I do clear it away, I use the physical button when I'm not side by side with my opponent, gifting them a free kick in a dangerous area. I make the same mistake of using the physical button, causing Wan-Bissaka to stumble, but as De Gea punches the ball out, I'm ready to press shoot to clear as the Arsenal players are lurking. When it comes to slide tackling, it's not something I use all that often, mainly last ditch tackles or if a player becomes isolated with no one to pass to, but the key is to wait for their touch of the ball, because if it's a heavy touch or they push the ball out in front of their player for a sprint, that's when I'll slide in. Otherwise they could turn if the ball is close to their feet, resulting in free kicks and cards. For standing tackles, these are similar to using the matchup, but are far more aggressive and literally forces your player to make a tackle regardless of if it will give away a foul or not. These are much riskier, but if you feel like it's safe enough for your player to make a standing tackle, then go for it. If I had to choose between the standing tackle and the matchup tackle is far safer, especially in the penalty box as we saw earlier. If I was in charge of development at Konami, I would strongly suggest to remove the tackle from the matchup button, because this would add a few extra layers to the skill gap. There are a few other controls that players don't use or don't know about. Did you know that if you hold your D-pad towards your opponent's goal, this will force your back line higher up the pitch, and if you double tap the D-pad towards your opponent's goal, this will cause your defensive line to play the offside trap. But this is very risky with players who have high offensive awareness, who do a good job to stay onside. This allows you to play a high pressing game, and by doing this causes the AI to run out of options and able to pinch the ball in a good area to cause damage on the counter attack. I found pushing the defensive line up particularly useful with the possession tactic and the 4-3-3 with Barcelona, especially with a pacey front line of Depay, Fati and Dembele. When it comes to the basics of defending, it's important to stay goal side of your opponent, track runners off the ball, maintaining your team shape, especially if you have one of the centre backs. Here my defensive line becomes a little bit disjointed as Umtiti is ahead of PK, but I fill the gaps and keep my eye on the danger players, especially if they have their hand raised, as this is a prime opportunity to look for a through ball. However, as I cover the gaps effectively, they run out of ideas and I'm able to take the ball. I mentioned earlier about the use of super cancel, and this is where you hold R1 and R2, or the right bumper and right trigger together, and this along with the left analog stick provides total freedom of movement. Normally in this scenario my player would run into the back of the attacking player and he'd be able to shield the ball, but with super cancel I'm able to run around, get in front of him and nick the ball away. I'll bring out a full super cancel tutorial out later on, but I already have an excellent super cancel tutorial from PES 2021 which is still valid for eFootball 2022. If you want to step up your game, then I'd highly recommend checking that out, which I'll link at the top of this video. Hopefully you're going to improve your defensive side, and I think it's really good actually, because the beauty about these new controls, it allows you to implement a style on your opponent which they may not like, and it's going to be team dependent. So you might have a big physical team such as Bayern Munich and you want to just high press and win the ball aggressively, or you may want to be a little bit more reserved, win the ball in the sort of danger areas of the penalty box using the matchup with that safer tackling. So it really does depend how you want to implement your style. If something's not working, then try something else. If you're defending deep and you're finding your opponents getting too many chances, try and push that defensive line up, play a little bit more compact, be a bit more aggressive, try and out-muscle them off the ball. Anyway, that's all from me, ladies and gents. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye bye.